Dennanannannannna, live picks with Spaceman Tim and Casey in his kitchen. The Vikings won this week, and now we're gonna talk about them and the NFC North. Hey, Tim.
Hey, Casey, how are you tonight?
Swell. How are you?
Great. And after I heard that song, did you write that over the past few days, or did that just come to you?
I wrote it. I used a xylophone to harmonize, but I didn't have it, so if it sounded bad, that's why.
Sure.
So, Tim, how absolutely thrilled are you with the first week's outcomes of the NFL?
On a scale of 1 to 10, it would be an 84 for Cordarrelle Patterson.
Oh my gosh, he's so good.
He's so good. No, I just feel like we talked about last week, we're out of the sports abyss, and what better way to start the week with a Packers and a Vikings win?
Man, some things just smell real sweet, and that was one of them.
Absolutely.
It smelled like moldy cheese. It was great.
Did someone leave bananas out in the car?
So, Tim, first and foremost, the Vikings crushed St. Louis, as we both, I think, had kind of expected, maybe not by that degree, but we both expected them to win. What do you think about this week's matchup versus the Patriots?
Well, I think there's no question that it's going to be a little bit tougher, even though we are playing at home at TCF for the first game. But what we saw with the Patriots game this last week wasn't exactly impressive either. One thing I noticed is that apparently they weren't able to play all 4 quarters. Tom Brady's accuracy started declining last year, and I think he's going to keep declining this year. Still an elite quarterback, don't get me wrong, but without those elite wide receivers that he's had in the past, I think his decline is going to be a little bit more noticeable. I loved our defense. I think they're going to have a harder time than we originally thought throwing on us. They gave up over almost 200 yards, I think, last week to Miami, like 130 to no Sean Moreno. I think that bodes well for Adrian Peterson. And if they focus on AP, I believe that Castle, Jennings, Rudolph, and Patterson can exploit the backfield. So I guess I'm feeling pretty confident. I think people are holding their take on the Vikings so far just because it's been one game against a pretty bad Rams team. But I think we can come out and on TCF Bank on Sunday and go 2-0.
I love it.
With a score of, I think it's going to be close. We're going to say 23-17 Vikings.
Wow, holding that Pats offense down.
What Pats offense? They played for 2 quarters last week and completely disappeared.
That's true.
They were already on the plane back to New England.
Mr. Brady, as you alluded to, has been not as consistent throwing the football the last couple of years. Only 29 of 56 in week 1. That's horrible. 4 of 11 throwing to Gronk. Not very good there either, obviously. The key question is Xavier Rhodes going to be healthy enough to play? If not, that could be very scary for the Vikings defense. If so, I think that you can look for them to play another solid game defensively. As you mentioned as well, the Patriots.
When Rhodes went down, did Robinson just play more?
I think it must have happened pretty late in the game because I think Xavier played most of the game, and by that point it was already out of competition. It was kind of the Vikings game already. So the Pats gave up 191 rushing yards though, and against Minnesota with Adrian Peterson, an offensive line that's played together now for 3 years, and Cordarrelle Patterson. I think the Vikings have a great opportunity to just run all over the Patriots. And North Turner proved this week that he's willing to just run the ball until you stop it. He's not trying to get fancy. He's not trying to take shots deep down the field if it doesn't call for it. They ran the ball 31 times. They only rushed 31 times, only passed 25 times. So if they don't need to, they're not going to. They'll control the ball and the clock, and I think they'll get a win. I think although Brady may woo the University of Minnesota female students and their yoga pants, The Minnesota Vikings defense will not be phased, and they win 24-22.
24-22. All right. So now this whole kind of talking point that I've been hearing a lot from on the radio and Sports Center, things like that. Bill Belichick and Tom Brady's record after a loss, I don't remember the exact number, but is astronomically in the positive. They bounce back really well, and the talking point is Bill Belichick makes corrections. When something goes wrong, he makes the right corrections for the next week. So when he lets up 190 yards running, is he the Bill Belichick that will not let that happen next week?
That's interesting, but Minnesota's rushing versatility with Cordero and Adrian is so unique. I think it's probably the best 1-2 rushing tandem in the NFL, and I know that's strange to say because so many teams have true 1-2 punches with running backs, but Cordero's versatility and how he can motion into the backfield and catch a defense off guard, or that fake jet sweep action to get a defense going one way, counter that with Adrian. I think it's terrifying probably for defenses to have to defend against both of those unbelievable playmakers.
I would agree. Was this not the first game since Adrian Peterson came into the league that a Vikings player had more than 100 yards rushing with Adrian Peterson on the team?
Is that a question? It might be. I don't know.
No, it is. So I've heard.
with Adrian healthy. With Adrian
healthy, right.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, for sure. Cordero he's Flash Patterson, man. He is amazing.
All right, on from Vikings talk. I think we're both in agreement that we're going to come out 2-0 and start garnering some respect from the rest of the league. But let's move on through the NFC North here. And let's
talk
Detroit.
About the Packers. Let's talk about the Packers.
Let's talk about the Packers. All right.
It's best if we talk about the Vikings and how awesome they are, and then we rail against the Packers right in that order, because nobody likes the Packers.
Fair enough.
They're terrible.
All right. So we have New York Jets at Green Bay. Casey, who wins and why?
I'm gonna say the Packers don't even score a point. No, I'm just kidding. They'll score a point. They were more demoralized in the NFL opener than Milli Vanilli, though. I mean, they flat out they didn't show up. They were lip syncing out there, and I realize that Seattle's amazing, so maybe I'm being a little bit hard on the Packers, but I despise them, so that's what I'm gonna do. They're not anywhere near as good as people think, though. Before the season, I only heard people were, up in arms at how amazing the Packers were and how they were going to run away with the division. They don't have a good defense. And I know you have Aaron Rodgers, but they continue to let offensive weapons go. They're not as good at the tight end position. They, 2 years ago, they let Jennings go to the Vikings, which maybe he's past their prime. That's how they do it. They draft players and they grow them up. They let James Jones go, and at some point they're going to have a receiver get hurt, and they're not going to be able to fill his shoes. And I don't think they're as dangerous at the receiver position as they've been in the past. They're certainly not as dangerous at the tight end position. Eddie Lacy's hurt. They got a hurt offensive lineman. Their defense is bad. Their defensive line especially is bad. LaTroy Guion, he couldn't even start here on a defense that gave up 30 points a game last season for the Packers. So their defensive line, garbage. They still win against the Jets, though. I'll give them a 27-20 victory, only because of Rodgers, but I think that this season they finish no better than second in the division.
Who's first?
Minnesota.
All right, I'm going to have to agree with you. I'll swap it around, and I'll do my prediction first. They are at home. They are at Lambeau. I think that's enough to get a victory against almost any team in the NFL, no matter how down of a year they might have. But let's talk about that offensive line, which played, again, against a very, very strong Seattle defense. But Aaron Rodgers got hit a lot last Thursday night. And he went down with an injury last year as well, so he's not invincible. He's not Brett Favre. He's not going to play forever. I mean, he is injury not prone, but he can get injured. He's, like I said, he's not invincible. And how many hits can he take, especially when he starts playing teams in the NFC North? When you got the Vikings, whose strong front four looked very good. You go to the Bears and you have to play Jared Allen. You go to the Lions and you got to play Sue, and I guess Nick Fairley, right? Yep. And I wonder how long he's going to be able to hold up in the division, and if they'll even have him the whole year. So I think the offensive line is the thing that scares me the most with them. The Jets do have a semblance of a running game, and we talked about how they did give up a lot of yards to Marshawn Lynch last week. That's fair. A lot of people are going to give up yards to Marshawn Lynch this year. But they have Chris Johnson, who looked okay in his new uniform with the Jets, and they have Chris Ivory, too, who is a serviceable running back. And that 1-2 punch, they're not going to get tired. They're going to play both. They're both going to get snaps, and they might wear down that defensive line. Regardless, I think we're right. I think the Packers still hold on win, but I think it might be a closer game than we think. The Packers are going to score points because that's what they do as long as everybody's healthy. So I'm going to say it's going to be 30-23 Packers.
All right. 23 for Geno and the Jets, huh?
Geno and the Jets. I think they can run a couple touchdowns or run a few in, and maybe their defense can score against. I don't even know who their second tier running back is in Green Bay. James Starks, is he still there?
Starks. I think so.
I'm calling it right now. Fumbles the football. Scoop and score.
Scoop and score. I'm on board.
Mm-hmm.
So Tim, you wanted to go towards the direction of Carolina, Detroit, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
I'll steer it your way. What
Detroit
do you think?
at Carolina, I think, is also very important. Detroit looked good this week. Stafford to Calvin Johnson, I think, is a threat that is everybody's going to be worried about. We've known that for the last couple of years. I think they're getting even more in sync. They have Golden Tate now, I believe. That just adds another weapon on the outside. Running backs were a little less impressive. Reggie Bush and Joique Bell, I think, got most of the carries in the second half. But still, there is danger there. At the tight end position, I believe is it still Pettigrew?
Yes, and they have Eric Ebron.
Yep. And he did he score a touchdown? Or I know he had a few catches this year. Or this
Ebron, he didn't have a catch though.
He didn't have a catch. Would you have him on your fantasy team, and now you're spiteful?
Yeah, big goose egg. He was on my bench, but yeah.
All right. But they're going into Carolina, who has over the past couple of years had a top 5 defense in the NFL. They've been playing great, and I guess I like the lines that they can score as many points. I think it's going to be a classic offense over defense sort of situation, and I think I'm going to give the Panthers the edge at home. It's going to be really close. It's going to be a lower scoring game than the Lions, I think, would like, and it's going to be 23-20 Carolina.
I actually am going to have to agree in entirety with what you just said. I'd love to play devil's advocate, but no, I think that Detroit is no different than they've been in the past. I won't believe they are until I see differently. They're an explosive passing offense, but they're extremely finesse. They can't run the ball when they need to get yards. They have a mediocre defense, and they shoot themselves in the foot time and time again with costly turnovers and with, more importantly, stupid penalties that give teams more chances than they need. They get unnecessary personal fouls. And they're the Motor City choke artists. They really are, because last season they were 6-3. To win the division, they would have only needed to win 2 more games.
Mm-hmm.
And they ended the season at 7-9, 1-6 in their last 7 games. That's just typical what Detroit's been. They've had all the talent offensively that they would have needed the last few years to make the playoffs, to win the division. And I think they might have made the playoffs one year, but they continue to fall short of expectations. And I don't expect this season to be any differently, really. And then to your point for this specific game, when you're playing the Carolina Panthers, the NFL's second best defense last season. I think that Carolina can shut down that pass-happy finesse offense and really kind of set the tone and play physical defense and get a win. And I think probably something semi-low scoring for NFL standards. We'll say 24-20 Carolina.
All right. And I hope we disagree on something at some point this season. Otherwise, this is going to get awfully boring, Casey.
I'm gonna just disagree with you on this next one, no matter what. No, I'm not.
No,
I did research, Tim. I've got set answers.
I was going to say this is not going to be the one that we disagree on. I feel the Chicago Bears started with a loss to the Buffalo Bills at home at Soldier Field. How awful for them and how wonderful for us. Now they travel to San Francisco. I think the Chicago Bears are going to start 0-2 on the season. They're going to dig themselves into a hole and might be the cellar dweller of this division. Why don't you start off with the analysis, though, Casey?
I just feel like after that game, Mark Trestman probably, like Michael Cera in Arrested Development, kind of hung his head and just moped back to the locker room. He seems a little nerdy. I don't want to be mean. He seems like a nerdy guy, and maybe it's the glasses. Maybe it's that he's really skinny. I'm really skinny. I don't know. But I was doing some research on Mark Trestman in preparation for this pick, and I found out that he's coached now for 10 different NFL teams. In the 1990s, he had a 3-year hiatus from the NFL in which he sold municipal bonds. He is a nerd. I know he is. He's a member of the bar in the state of Florida. He passed law school. I don't know. He's done all sorts of strange things. You see this odd path, and we were supposed to believe that he was going to come in and, yes, he's had great success as an offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach, but we were supposed to believe that he was going to have success in the NFL because he did that, and he was a successful CFL coach. Let me tell you this. I don't care about the CFL. They have 9 teams. If you won 2 championships, that's not that impressive. I don't know. I think that the Bears maybe have a bit of an offensive identity in that they should be extremely pass-happy. They've got great weapons, but they don't have a defensive identity. They're much like the Detroit Lions. Minnesota's hopefully getting that this season. But right now, I can assure you that the Bears do not have that, and that they are going to lose to the San Francisco 49ers, mostly because I think Jim Harbaugh could beat, which Harbaugh? Yeah, it's Jim.
It is
I get
Jim.
confused between Jim and John.
Jim and John.
Either of them could beat him up. Either of those coaches could beat up Mark Trestman. And I think that because of that, he'll be intimidated, and the Bears are going to lose.
What's the score?
30-24, and Jim Harbaugh gets Trestman's lunch money.
Well, I think that score is too close. I'm going to have to agree with you on the outcome, like I said at the beginning. I think San Francisco is going to embarrass the Chicago Bears. The one thing that I learned about the Bears in Week 1 is that their defense did not get better. Jared Allen, if you watched the game, how many times did you hear Jared Allen's name? Don't get me wrong, I love the guy, but I think we may have gotten rid of him at the wrong time. I wish him all the well. I hope he gets 20 sacks this season, just none of them against the Vikings. But he was a non-factor in that game. And if you cannot get pressure on Colin Kaepernick and you give him time to either find Vernon Davis or Michael Crabtree or, find room to run for the first down, I think the Bears are going to be in a lot of trouble. They're playing in San Francisco, and I just don't think they're going to have it in them. I don't think they're going to be a team that bounces back well. I'm not sold on Trestman either. Maybe you're right. I know what you mean. Maybe he is. I'm pretty nerdy myself. I'm wearing a NASA shirt, but he just doesn't carry it well. I think that I don't think he is going to be able to lead this team into San Francisco and help them bounce back. I think they're going to walk in there with their heads hanging low. They're not going to be over that first loss, and I think they are going to get beat by probable, NFC, for sure NFC, within the NFC Championship game, 49ers. They've been it in the last 3 years. I think they can do it for a fourth year. I don't think the Bears stand a chance. It's going to be a blowout. Let's say the 49ers win 35-17. Maybe not a blowout, but still 35-17.
That's a blowout.
That's
yeah.
a blowout.
Three scores is a blowout, I think.
Yep.
Okay.
So after this week, since we were wrong on one. We were wrong with Chicago last week. But after this week, we're going to be right. I think the Vikes will still be at the top of the NFC North, won't they?
That would make them so, especially if they lose to Carolina, which they will.
They will.
Duh.
And hey, maybe the Jets will show us something and take down the Packers at Lambeau.
They only gave up 158 total yards against Oakland.
Wow.
It's Oakland.
Oakland.
Granted, it is Oakland, but I think the Jets probably. I mean, that's Rex Ryan's staple, right? He's
Right.
always got a good defense. Well, he generally has a good defense,
Right.
and if he doesn't have a good defense, he's not going to have a job because he's kind of had his chances.
Yeah. I am over the Rex Ryan experiment. I don't think he's funny. I don't think he has character. I don't think he adds some spice to the NFL. I think he needs to go. I think he's a defensive coordinator.
He was funnier when he was fat. There's nothing funny about a skinny person, to quote Jonah Hill.
All right. Well, we did the NFC North. If you'll notice from last week, we will not be going through any extra games. We want to keep it short and interesting for you guys. If you check the page later, I will be updating our last week's picks and updating the rest of the NFL picks that Casey and I decide on off air if you want to check those out. Otherwise, thanks for watching. We will see you all next week. Go Vikings. And anything to add, Casey?
Love you guys.